Welcome to Credentialing Chronicles, where we spill the doctor's tea, honey, hotter than your morning coffee.
And we're spilling it across America, state by state and license by license.
Ooh, I'm Shannen, and honey, she is Nyleen. And we are just a couple of sassy credentialing pros with front row seats to all this crazy chaos.
Yes, from coast to coast, fraud scandals to hospital drama they hoped you'd never find.
Yeah, but we find it, girl. So grab your coffee, your compliance checklist, and what, Nyleen?
And let's get into it.
Hell yeah. Well, Nyleen and Shannen sitting there talking about you while you pull up a chair. They holding everything.
Hey, Shannen. Welcome back to Credentialing Chronicles, where we spill the tea on healthcare systems, credentialing breakdowns, and of course, the stories hiding behind all of these lovely polished reputations.
And today, you all, we are heading to Illinois. Now, on the surface, Illinois looks very distinguished, very established, very elegante. They have big names, academic prestige, baby, historic loopholes, but a healthcare landscape that appears organized, reputable, and solid. But the deeper we looked, the more the episode was feeling like one of those situations where everything looks clean in the lobby, but the basement, y'all, is on fire.
Oh my goodness, Shannen. And you know, that is exactly the vibe, because this is not loud, obvious chaos. There's a lot of stories you would think we all heard of, and we might touch on one that's actually latest and greatest, but it's not a system necessarily screaming for help, right? It's not like burning down, kind of like Hawaii, right? This is something much more dangerous. This is like a quiet risk.
That's a good way to say it. And, you know, a quiet risk is the kind that gets missed sometimes by people. You know, it slips through the crack because people really aren't assuming that, really people are assuming that somebody else is watching it all the time. And I guess somebody else is reporting it too. Or maybe even somebody else is monitoring it. But somebody else is stopping the problem before it gets to the patient, honey, because nobody's monitoring it.
Well, according to the themes, really, we keep seeing over and over and over again. And I wish we could have like different headers, but the reality is, at the end of the day, I think we've really narrowed it down to a couple, because like Illinois and like every other state, it really gives us a picture of what's actually happening in credentialings, right? Delays, poor follow-throughs, weak intervention, fragmented oversight. And it starts all stacking up to each other, and it just like all shows up in many different ways.
True. And before we get started, really quick disclaimer. This episode is for commentary, education, and discussion based on publicly reported allegations, investigations, lawsuits, honey, settlements, and maybe some criminal proceedings. We have not credentialed any of these doctors discussed, and we have not worked for these healthcare institutions. But let me tell you, baby, Nyleen has taken a deep dive using Baton.
Oh, yes. Well, and because this is Credentialing Chronicles, we're not here to sensationalize for the sake of sensationalizing, okay? We're here to ask the question, what matters most? How do these situations make it through a system that is supposed to protect patients?
Good question.
All right, Shen, kick it off.
Well, Illinois is fascinating because it's a state people tend to trust automatically. You know, there's this assumption that we found out that if a state has nationally known healthcare systems, academic medical centers, specialty programs, and major metropolitan healthcare infrastructure, then the back end must be strong too. I mean, it's only right to assume that, correct? But according to the patterns, Nyleen, that we're seeing in the script you shared, that anticipation is exactly where the danger starts for a lot of people.
Yeah, because we kept coming back to you showing me, all these delays and delays in discipline, maybe not some delays in some states, maybe some delays in others, delays in enforcement, delays in acting on complaints. And the reality is a lot of things in credentialing depend on timeliness and depend on truth.
Ooh, that's very true. And that line right there, honey, is this whole episode, Nyleen. Credentialing depends on timely truth. Because if your source systems are slow, your data is stale, baby.
Yes.
If complaints are sitting somewhere unaddressed, your file is literally incomplete. And if someone says, well, technically, no final action has ever been taken, yet that does not mean there is no risk for the patient. It just means that the paperwork hasn't even caught up to the danger yet, which sounds like to us, even a higher risk, right, Nyleen?
Exactly. And MSPs, we know exactly what that feels like. You're expected to make a clean, defensible decision using systems that may be incomplete or delayed or having to be rushed or overly dependent on, waiting for that formal action. Meanwhile, the pressure from operations, again, is always the same. Hurry up. When can we get them on? Can we move this along? Can we stop holding this up?
Say it for the people in the back, Nyleen. But I mean, you're right. Because according to everything Illinois represents in this episode, move it along can literally become one of the most dangerous phrases in healthcare administration, you all. That and we've always done it this way.
Yes, we need to coin that. Like, don't move it along. Don't say we've always done it this way, right? And Google.
Yes. Google it. Google alert. Because really every time someone says, we'll circle back, there is a patient on the other side of that delay when we're pending that circle back.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about delays, because one of the themes in Illinois, right, outlines is that when licensing timelines lag, everything behind them lags too. So a renewal can lag, a status update can lag, public-facing records can lag, disciplinary history may not be interpreted with the urgency it deserves.
Yes, exactly. And here's where organizations get themselves into major trouble, you all. A facility may say, well, the board has not acted. Does that mean you can't? Well, the license is still active. Does that mean he can still be active privileges at your facility? Well, nothing final has happened yet. But something final can happen at your facility. But they say that because it sounds safe on paper. But according to credentialing mindset, that is not where the inquiry ends. That is where the inquiry begins, you all.
Yeah, because an active license is really not the same thing. As we've said many times before, does not mean that there's no risk. And we're going to highlight this as the episode continues, because an open investigation is not nothing. Repeated allegations are not nothing. A lawsuit pattern is not nothing. It's, everybody has, 3 lawsuits. No, odd documentation is not nothing, right? A peer review concerning peer review, a problem in peer review is not nothing.
Or an OPPE coming back loca. That should be escalated to a FPPE. You should focus on what the loca is and look into that deeper. I mean, very true, Nyleen. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we're learning, right, out of Illinois is the absence of immediate board action, you all, can create this false, emotional reassurance inside the organization with the patients, even with the MSP community. People treat still license like it means still safe. And you all, that is not necessarily true. If you take one thing from this episode, take that.
I just can't get over the fact that all of these things lead to, just at the end of the day, a broader pattern, right? Credentialing teams need more than just one checkpoint. They need, right? They need ongoing monitoring, behavior concerns, MPDB review, a leadership. This is key, okay, guys? A leadership that's willing to pause when someone doesn't pass the smell test. Listen, it's so hard for us to be the ones in the room to have to tell the CMO or your department chair, listen, I just need y'all to back me up. Look at this file. Look at these red flags and tell me something about it.
Yeah. And MSPs, we always are saying, listen to your gut. If it don't feel right, don't pass it through. And those are the things that, Nyleen is saying. Leadership, you have to listen when an MSP is saying, look, it just don't feel right in my gut.
Exactly. So, Shannen, I want to start spilling some tea because, listen, remember you called me a couple of weeks ago and you were like, girl, did you hear the news? And I was like, no, what happened? And And Shannen, I couldn't wait. I can't wait to Ohio to tell this story. So it involves Ohio and Illinois, but we're going to do Illinois.
Okay. Well, and when we get to Ohio, we'll do their side of it.
I'm going to tell you this story. It was supposed to be an ordinary winter week. The kind of week where hospitals are busy, inboxes are full, credentialing teams are doing what they always do, verifying, reviewing, chasing paperwork, clearing files, moving providers through a system that never slows down, right?
Take me there, baby.
Girl, but somewhere in the middle of all of that, there was a story unfolding that didn't look like credentialing at first. Girl, it looks like a crime.
Ooh. Okay, so let me set it up. 2 people were found dead inside of a house, Nyleen. And the 2 people, a husband and a wife, an esposo and an esposa, shot, killed, girl, in a case so disturbing, so unsettling that it immediately pulled national attention. So there was no obvious signs of forced entry, honey. The lock wasn't mangled. It was all looking good. There was no immediate explanation for this entire crime. No simple answer literally sitting on the nightstand. And for a moment, all anyone who had was the question, y'all, who did this? That's all they could ask.
Well, girl, as investigators worked the case, details started emerging. Surveillance, vehicle movements, girl, the security cameras, all the things, right? And then the trail,
ring.
They started crossing state lines. You know, when they cross state lines, they got to call the FBI. Well, girl, eventually authorities zeroed in on a suspect. Not a drifter, girl. Not a stranger. Not someone disconnected. Not some lowlife off the street. Not some drug dealer. But someone from a professional lifestyle. Yes, girl. None other than a physician.
A licensed physician? Someone educated for 39 years in the medical field? No, not 39, but it does take at least 16 sometimes. Trained, credentialed, a person trusted to treat patients, enter hospitals, work through healthcare spaces. With this kind of authority, that comes with a white coat and a clean-looking file, baby. And that's when this story stopped being only about a homicide investigation. Because once that detail entered the picture, a second question came into focus. And what happens when the person in the headlines on your news is still in the system?
Ooh, and that's where this gets uncomfortable, because this doctor is not just licensed in one state. This doctor held several licenses across the United States. Some are currently expired, but now he still has a couple active. Yeah, so we'll talk about that in detail. But depending on where you look, the picture changed. In one place, wow, an action got started. And in another state, the license is clear and active. Same provider, different state, different reality.
Nyleen, we have to walk the people slowly through what you're saying, okay? Because first came a restriction, right? I mean, you know, a restriction happens usually. I mean, that's not a full stop.
Exactly. So tell me what they put. What was the first restriction that they put on him?
Well, I don't know. I know one thing, though. It was an immediate nationwide. It's not an immediate nationwide freeze, right?
No, it's not an alert across 50 states. That's the first problem. But anyway, they did do it in the state of Illinois. So he got arrested in Illinois. Okay. He got arrested in Illinois. But the first order that they did is they did what?
A chaperone order, which meant that the provider would allowed to continue to see the patients, but only if someone else was physically present during every patient encounter, you all, and pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings. So he had to do this the entire time that they were in court. And let's just pause there right now, okay? Because that sentence alone should make everyone listening to this episode stop breathing for a second.
It's crazy. Now, the thing is Illinois did act. So I'm going to say he got arrested and the first action was relatively I would say soon, right? But it's in January. We're talking January. We are now in March, okay? It is national headlines because this is a story that was on like nightly news and like the whole thing. So when I looked up his license, a week later, they let him see patients, quote unquote, chaperoned, which, okay, who's going to check the license in a week? Like, come on, right?
Well, wait a minute. I was saying who was allowing to say, okay, I'm going to chaperone him?
Girl.
Like, do they have chaperones at the medical board? Like, okay, Dr. Smith, you're up to chaperone the next crazy. You know, like, how does that work? Does he have to find his own?
Yeah, he has to find his own. No, he does. He has to find his own. Yeah. He has to find his own. And then the people supposedly, right, looking over you are supposed to hold that accountable. So let me get you the dates. Okay, so you said the first action was the can't see anybody by himself. Okay, which if you murder somebody, like what?
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up.
Okay, but listen, according to the Illinois State Board website, it says that due to a pending criminal case, the licensee can only practice with a chaperone present during all patient encounters pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings. The licensee is presumed innocent until proven guilty of the charges.
Okay.
So he got arrested. January 14th, they take this action. So now let me walk you through. January 29th, okay? 15 days later, that's only 2 weeks. It says, physician and surgeon license is temporarily suspended for failing to comply with a chaperone order put in place as a result of respondent being charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder. That's on the board website of Illinois.
Are y'all checking the doctor's website, y'all? Are y'all on the medical board? Because the T is there.
Girl, so you know what I did? Well, of course, what did I do? I look him up in Baton. I put him in Baton. So Baton, help me out here. What other state license did he have? So like I said, he had all those other licenses. So he has another active license in California. What does active license in California say? Clear and active, no pending criminal charges, no pending investigations, no actions on other licenses. And then you have this little caveat. This is all based on self-reported information. So, do we not see the danger here, guys, of one state board not talking to another? Are we 50 countries or 50 states? I'm very confused.
Are we United States?
Are we united, right? And if you work in credentialing, medical staff services, compliance, provider enrollment, anything in that world, you already know what all of this means. It means that the system knows enough to be concerned in one part of the world, of our country, right? Of our country. But obviously, Illinois is way too far east to get all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah, and that's just crazy because, like, I always like to think of the patient. And so, okay, there's a patient. So the patient is in California seeing this doctor, clear, unrestricted license. But the patient that's in Illinois seeing this doctor can go online and check. So what does a patient do? Well, the one thing we always say is Google alert, because this was national news at this time, and you would have been able to get that Google alert even if you lived in California, and you would have been able to see that your doctor had this going on. So just FYI, Google alert save lives.
I know. Well, that's what you always talk about, is putting some kind of safeguard. And then here's where this story, girl, becomes pure Credentialing Chronicles material, because again, you go from one state. If he got bail, or if he has bailed out, or whatever, we know a criminal case can take years. Technically, the fact that another state has not taken action means one provider, multiple licenses, one state signaling danger, and another state just reading active, current, clear.
And the second action that they took is the temporary suspension. Okay. So not because the world suddenly had learned that this case had existed, y'all, but it was because the headlines just broke. So because the provider had allegedly failed to comply with that original order that Nyleen discussed. So now the question gets even darker. Is the first safeguard was just put in place and that safeguard wasn't followed? So how much risk was already being tolerated before anyone said enough? So the man had already had 2 charges of aggravated assault, and they put this safeguard. So they say, it's okay that you have that. This other doctor's going to chaperone you. Go ahead and see some more patients.
So he didn't even last 2 weeks in the States. Like, oh, wait, it was murder. It was murder. Now all of a sudden, I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, it's whoa. I mean, let's look at it, right? So now imagine you're a hospital, okay? Imagine you're a medical staff professional, baby. Imagine you're reviewing a file, because that's one of the things, that medical staff professionals do. Imagine somebody asks the first basic question in the world. Hey, y'all, is the license active? And technically, depending on which state you're checking, the answer is yes.
That's scary. That has to make every healthcare leader deeply uncomfortable. That should make every healthcare organization that does not do a 50 license check, doesn't have a platform like Baton, or you're spending the money on the FSMB or whatever it is, it should terrify you, because active is one of the most dangerous words. Like we said in credentialing, when nobody asks what's behind it. Active doesn't mean unproblematic. It doesn't mean low risk. It doesn't mean safe. Sometimes active, it just means that the systems haven't talked to each other yet.
And sometimes they don't even want to talk, Nyleen.
Girl.
Illinois says, say, hey, California, let me tell you what happened, boo. They're not saying that. I'm just saying, I'm letting y'all know out there, they are not saying that. And that right there, to be honest, I mean, is what me and Nyleen have found is Illinois' story. It's not chaos that you see from like the parking lot. It's not a disaster announced over the loudspeaker, you all. It's something quieter. It's a polished looking healthcare landscape with literal fractures underneath, you guys. A state where delay, fragmentation, inconsistent action can literally lead organizations holding literally only part of the truth.
I just can't. I can't get over the fact that both haven't talked to each other in 2 months, and that it's a national headline and nobody has alerted. Because if the license is suspended, it's already been more than 30 days. There should have been an automatic alert to California that something changed,
or at least to the NPDB.
Right. Like something. It's so dangerous. Like I can't. Anyway, let's get on to another story. Talk to me about that unnecessary procedure doctor that we talked about, because girl, I can't deal with all of these stories. Tell me about another disturbing case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's the most disturbing categories of cases in this Illinois conversation. Medically unnecessary, invasive procedures, you all.
Not again.
Yeah, every time. And according to this case summary, Nyleen, you provided it. An Illinois OBGYN was sentenced in 2025 to 10 years, you all, in federal prison for a multi-year fraud scam that allegedly included defrauding insurers, performing medically unnecessary invasive procedures, falsifying the patient's records, and falsifying documentations literally about cancer-related concerns, with some patients suffering irreversible harm, including infertility.
Not infertility. Oh, no.
Yes, they took away the opportunity for them to have babies.
And that case is horrifying. Well, that is horrifying because it's not just fraud. It's not just saying, oh, I billed for a brace, right? It's betrayal. And really from credentialing and a privileging standpoint, it raises every possible nightmare of a question. Were there complaint patterns? Were there documentation discrepancies? Were outcomes reviewed consistently? Did anyone notice outlier procedures? Why is everybody getting a hysteroscopy? Remember that episode? So similarly, this doctor was doing the same thing.
And because according to the allegations, this was not paperwork sloppiness, you guys. This was alleged manipulation of the medical record in a way that changed lives. The patient's lives were literally changed. And that is harming a patient. And that is where people need to understand. Documentation fraud is not administrative, you all. It is clinical violence when it drives unnecessary treatment. Because if a doctor writes something down, it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. That's what you justify is whatever is written down. And once a false narrative is found in the chart, it becomes powerful. It justifies procedures, right? That's every time you submit a claim, sends us the medical records. It really shapes the future care that you receive. Did you have that injury before? Did you have that problem before? It influences other providers. It impacts the billing, the level of service, and it technically becomes their official story.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was thinking about like that Gypsy Rose. You remember her? And it was her documentation. The mother was just going around to all the different doctors saying, oh, she got this. And then the doctors would write it down. And then the next doctor would look at it, believe what the doctor said, and then just kind of go off of that.
It became part of the medical record. Wow.
Yes. And then, they say, oh, look at what they've done to the girl. Well, yeah, I mean, that was horrible clinical violence when you're at the hand of the mom. But I'm just like, the documentation in any situation is the most important. And that's why credentialing cannot, you all, just be about whether the provider has the required degree, the required license, the required training, or the required privilege on paper. I mean, according to what these kinds of cases teach us, and this is again why we are going all around. Who else has done it? Who else has been to all 50 states and talked about the credentialing pros and the credentialing cons in each state? Nobody, only Credentialing Chronicles. And the reason why we're doing it is we have to bring attention to this behavior, complaints, quality matrix, peer concerns, and whether patterns emerging are matching what is practiced and matching what's being reported. I mean, if we could just put a mirror to this so that healthcare agencies and organizations can start seeing it and doing better, then we have done our job.
And it's what we've identified is that it's literally the same things happening just with different doctors' names on it. It's the same thing. Every state, different organizations. Yeah, a little nuance here or there or whatever. And then what happens is, okay, great. So now this doctor gets charged of fraud, but then you have large institutions, right, that can cover things up. Why? I'm going to tell you about another major Illinois theme, right? That you included, and you're telling me about this, again, your favorite kind of provider, an OBGYN, facing extensive allegations of misconduct, including claims that he practiced while intoxicated and had repeated inappropriate behavior with patients. So, according to your notes, the allegations triggered dozens of lawsuits and ultimately led to license loss after, again, numerous reports of misconduct. Unfortunately, when we complain, Shannen, it can't just be one woman. We end up having numerous before anything is even listened to.
Yeah, a whole slew of women have been hurt or mangled before. I mean, yeah, you're right. You're so right. And this is where institutions get themselves into reputational disaster, because once the pattern becomes public, everyone asks the same question: who knew what and when? And it seems to me like they're calling the same consultant to deal with the problems because they're all dealt with the same way. And I'm going to be honest with you, the consultant is not doing a very good job for y'all, okay?
Girl. And it doesn't just apply to leadership, right? Like it applies to the supervisors, it applies to peers, it applies to the department chairs, it applies to medical staff offices, to your CMO. It applies to anybody who saw smoke and decided, well, it's not my problem. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to start any problems. I really don't know what I'm doing. It's not. It's everybody's fault. I'm sorry.
Nyleen called y'all out. Nyleen said, if you saw smoke and you decided not to say nothing, it's your problem. Ooh, Nyleen.
If they got hurt, it's your fault. Girl, you better call the cops.
Immediately. I mean, according to cases like this, the biggest institutional risk is often not the first complaint, you all. I mean, we are seeing this in every episode. It is the second, third, 10th, or even 50th complaint that we're now seeing. And this is where the system tells on itself, because one complaint may be disputed, right? But a pattern, baby, a pattern is a warning flare.
Exactly. And that's why we talk about ongoing monitoring. I mean, I guess that's the whole purpose of having this whole reappointment cycle, right? It's not just source verification. It's not just, maintaining your expirables up to date or looking at everything in reappointment. And it's not just, I'm checking off a box every 2 or 3 years. It's real-time, behavior-sensitive, concern-responsive monitoring, right? It's everybody's responsibility to see something and say something.
And get a background check on your recred. I'm going to say that because if you get a background check, you're actually really verifying.
Girl, we got to get them to do a background check on initial. Let's start there, okay?
On initial and recred, because practicing while allegedly impaired is not a minor professionalism issue. This is direct patient safety risk. And that is informed consent risk. That is a quality of care risk. And that is a privileging risk. I mean, do you see the risk that we're pulling? And I'm going to be honest with you. The last one that is huge is it's a liability exposure on a catastrophic level.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to move to one of the ugliest parts of this Illinois episode. I'm very sorry, you guys. According to but all we do is report. All we do is investigate and report. But according to the Chicago Tribune, y'all want to hear what happened? Major Illinois health systems were reported to have allowed workers to continue treating patients despite reports of sexual abuse. Some of these individuals were later charged with abusing additional patients, y'all, after employees failed to act immediately on initial reports.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of sentence that should stop every hospital executive in their tracks, because once someone has continued access after a serious allegation, the risk is no longer theoretical. And we're not telling you to go ahead and just report everything automatically to MPDB. But we have to learn how to put a pause. We have to learn how to listen. We have to learn how to document.
Exactly, Nyleen. Nyleen Flores, every time. Exactamente. And let's be precise here. We are not saying every allegation is proof. No.
Allegedly. But a lot of allegedlys lead to a lot of allegedlys. You know what I'm saying?
You got more than 3 allegedlys. Investigate.
Investigate.
Like deep investigate, okay? I mean, we're saying organizations have a duty to respond decisively when a patient safety threat is reported. But according to that reporting theme, let me tell you what happens. Some systems did not even move fast enough, if they moved at all.
Right. So which means that the core issue becomes access. Who still needs access to patients? Okay. And we're talking not access to care for patients. We're talking access criminally, right? Like a physician having access to their prey. And, who still has access to patients? Who still has exam room access? Who still had authority? Who was abusing that authority? Who was allowed to continue touching, evaluating, treating vulnerable people while concerns were known? And I'm sorry, the nurses know. Nurses know better.
And Nyleen, when the answer is they are still working, that is an organization failure every single time, you guys. Because once credible sexual misconduct concerns arise, organizations should be thinking about immediate patient protection, immediate reporting channels, review of their privileges, HR coordination into this, legal review, and whether continued access is even indefensible.
And according to the settlement summary that you included involving a major Illinois health system and a former physician accused of sexually abusing these patients, the alleged institutional failure was not just the abuse. It was the claim that the system knew about it, okay, and chose to cover it up, failed to stop it.
Oh, God, when you say those words, it just hurts me. And that is where these cases become bigger than one person, you all. I mean, this becomes about culture. What does leadership do with discomforting information? What does leadership do to protect the patients when something has been discovered? What does leadership do when they want to protect the institution until the institution is literally impossible to protect because the carpet is so lumpy you can't even walk on the carpet?
Exactly. Well, it comes about money. And so let's just talk really quick about this other hospital scandal, because it's a classic example of how corruption infects patient care. And according to the information, the hospital's owner, the executives, and the doctors were arrested, criminally charged in connection with a long-running kickback conspiracy involving payments to doctors for referring Medicare and Medicaid patients with allegations that unnecessary medical treatments were performed in order to bill insurers. So now we got a whole ring and everybody's involved. You got the C-suite, you got the doctors, you got everybody kicking back with cash cash here and there, everything's about the money.
I know. It's like maybe people need to get their spending under control if they need this much money. That's what I'm going to say. Because this case is one of those moments where healthcare starts sounding less like care delivery and more like a transactional ATM machine, you all. And the second referrals are being bought right now. Patient need is no longer leading the process, right? If money is, I mean, that is what is leading these type of processes.
Right. And so this, according to all of these allegations, that can lead to not just bad billing, right? Okay, but you're talking just bad medicine, because if the reimbursement is driving the treatment plan, then you're not treating the person. You're just trying to maximize what you can get out of that person, And a lot of times, like, listen, guys, like, I get it, getting paid $100 for a consult is extremely painful, because that $100 went out the window the first 5 minutes that you just looked at the patient, right? By the time you paid your check and your MA and your admin, there's no money left for the doctor, okay? If we're going to be realistic, but you can't take it to this level, right? We can't take it to, kickbacks.
No, we can't take it where you're making up inventory to get more billing, I mean, that's true. And that's an ugly, I'm sorry, but, it's so ugly, but it's so accurate, Nyleen, what you're saying, and from a credentialing perspective, you all, kickback schemes are a reminder, like literally, that the provider file cannot be reviewed in isolation from the business environment.
I know. How do we combine that? It's so hard. And I'm telling you, because I'm really analyzing that as I get into more consulting, how we can really work together to help stop some of these, because we can see how prevalent it is. Every state we've done, it's all this kickbacks and fraud billing and all this stuff.
Well, that's case logs, right? You look at what you've built out in that facility and you start seeing if there's patterns of behavior. But I mean, when you're looking at it, you're saying who is financially connected to who, right? What referral patterns look abnormal? Are there conflicts? Like, how are they in this OR on this day, but this OR at this day? I mean, that would literally, I mean, and are there outlier admissions? Is there unnecessary procedures clustering? Did they go in for their knee and come out with a hysterectomy? Lord help me, right?
Oh my goodness. The sad thing is that's probably happened before. But anyway, the fraud is...
Remember the guy that you did it in the episode that they took his spleen? Like, just the whole spleen?
I know. So the fraud is rarely just clinical, but obviously it's financial, it's operational, it's cultural, it's structural, and it thrives where oversight is weak or fragmented. So let's do our PSA segment of the episode. Let's talk directly to our MSP.
Not our episode is over. Illinois had so much tea, honey.
We've been talking for too long, girl.
Okay.
Listen, we got to talk to all of these people. So Illinois, all right. It's kind of the episode that proves your role is definitely not clerical. It is protective. I need y'all to run those background checks. I need y'all to use baton. I need y'all to get your verifications in order. Get everything, as much information as you can get. Okay?
And according to Illinois' framework in, this script, MSPs are often stuck chasing licenses. I mean, I hate to say that, but that seems like what it is. And following up on delays and dealing with executive pressure, and still expected to make everything look compliant and be ready on time.
We're superstars. I know we're superstars, but
And still look cute, still have your hair done, your makeup done, MSPs. Okay. And that is exactly why your instincts matter. Listening to your gut matters. If you feel something is incomplete, it probably is. If something feels rushed, you probably know why it is, right? If a story doesn't line up, listen, keep digging, figure out why it doesn't line up. If a pattern is forming, document it, you all. Documentating patterns is the number one way to spot patterns. If someone's trying to minimize a concern because it's like, hurry up, we need to get this file going, we've always done it this way, pay attention, because something's going on there.
Yeah, because your job is not the obstacle.
No, you're not.
No, your job is to be the checkpoint.
I know it's like I always used to say that in my first marriage. I always just be like, I'm not your enemy, dude. Like, I'm your wife, And it's like the same thing. You need to tell the MEC that. You need to be like, I'm not your enemy. Like, I'm your MSP. It's not my job to be an obstacle. It's my job to make sure that you guys are good all ways, And I guess, checkpoint people are never popular in the moment, right? We kind of suck. And they are, but we're totally essential. And when things go bad, and we're the ones that when things go bad, they can say, did you get that done? And you say, well, you rushed me. No, don't let that be the excuse of why it didn't get done.
Okay. So what about for patients? What do you think, Shannen?
Well, I'm going to say every day, look up your doctor, look up your nurse practitioner, set a Google alert, ask questions. Please ask questions. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. Do not assume a white coat equals safety. Please verify your doctor in whatever state you're in. It is a free process. You could do it for free. And the other thing I would say is now I'm saying, Nyleen, bring a chaperone. I don't care if you got to bring the lady in the waiting room. Girl, come in here with me. Come in here with me. I'll come in your appointment. You come in my appointment.
Exactly. And girl, be careful of your ex-husband. You're about to get killed. I said, Lord, you got to be careful getting divorced these days. If he's a doctor, watch out. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little concerned. We love you, doctors, but please don't kill your wives. This is already 2 episodes in a row, 3 episodes in a row where they be killing their wives.
Nyleen be looking for him, y'all. If you're killing your wife, Nyleen finding it, okay?
Okay, so silence inside an institution doesn't mean everything is fine, everything looks amazing, doesn't mean everything is perfect. So for healthcare leaders, Shannen, doctors, like our CMOs, what do you think?
Well, if you wait for a disaster to become undeniable before you act, you have already failed the patient and your institution. Build better reporting systems, respond to patterns. Do not minimize staff concern. Do not minimize your MSP's concern. Do not hide behind no final action. And do not let business pressure, your C-suite, outrun patient protection. Patient protection should always be number 1 at the core and center.
Right. If you're safe, if you're ethical, if you're professional and accountable, none of this should offend you. It really shouldn't. We love our doctors. I love my great doctors. I have the privilege of working with an amazing general surgeon who's my new CMO now. And he is spectacular. He is on board, wants to research, wants to support the MSP, wants to support the medical staff structure. And these things should matter to you. You should also care about your doctor's health and the best of medical staff you can have within your organization. Because every time a dangerous doctor stays in the system or a dangerous practitioner stays in the system, trust in the whole profession takes a hit. Your reputation is also at risk.
Ooh, Nyleen, say it, boo.
Okay, Shannen, so Illinois, credentialing gem or a polished hot mess? What do you think?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to go with Illinois is polished on the outside, but messy where it matters most. Okay. Because according to the patterns that we've seen, fraud, unnecessary treatments, misconduct, allegations, sexual abuse reporting failures, kickback schemes, delayed intervention. The problem is not Illinois' lax institution. No. The problem is that the institutions are only as safe as their willingness to act against the providers for the patient safety.
Wow. And that's the whole lesson, right? The biggest risks are not always loud. Sometimes they sit quietly in a file. Sometimes they sit quietly in a complaint log. Sometimes they sit quietly behind a still active license in another state. Sometimes they sit quietly in a hallway where everyone knows something is wrong and nobody wants to be the first one to say it out loud.
But over here, we're saying it all out loud because credentialing is not just paperwork. It's not just a process, y'all. It's not just onboarding. It is patient protection. And when the system gets quiet about risk, somebody has to start making noise. And Nyleen and I just have to do it.
Girl, that is what we do here at Credentialing Chronicles. So we'll see you guys next time. Like, share, follow. We do need your help. Tell a friend. Tell somebody about the amazing job that you do. Tell them all the crazy things you find, and we'll talk about it for you. And Credentialing Chronicles. Stay credentialed and not canceled.
That was a whole nation's worth of tea, girl.
Ooh, and we are just getting started. More states, more scandals, and definitely more receipts.
And if you love the tea we're spilling, you gotta like, you gotta comment, follow us, share, do everything. Where can they do all that at, Nyleen?
They can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, on all the things. And share it because the tea is going coast to coast.
Oh, I love it. See you next time on Credentialing Chronicles. Remember, you gotta stay credentialed, but not what?
Not canceled.